welcome back to 2 Cells 1 Pack.
Thank you to eevees for lending us this veteran Patton for us to take a quick look at, as well as do our first impressions. If you're looking to buy your next wheel, use our code down at the bottom and you'll get free swag from eevees. Let us know with your order number and we will give you a free personal gift. Now, let's get to it. So firstly, looks like we'll take off this top cover. It looks like that was just a cosmetic cover to cover up these battery cables. Yeah, there seems to be a lot of slack in these battery cables, so let's keep going. Now that we remove the cover, we can see the phase wires, the hall sensor, and the board. Now looking at this top panel, there is a good edge here that matches up with the top cover to prevent any water to come in. However, these sides here are flat. So although the probability of water getting in is very minimal, it is possible to get in a heavy rain scenario, as the water could seep into the inner covers. And being that the board is not on a raised edge, it could be technically possible for water to get to the board. Now looking at the way this wheel is put together, I think my strategy first would be to remove all the accessories, the pedals, the front bumper, the front handles, and rear handle and rear kickstand. And then we can analyze where we are at that point and go from there. Now that we've unscrewed the headlight, let's try to take it off. Looks like Leaper-Kim is retaining the use of the 3.5mm headphone jack to run power. I really like that Leaper-Kim uses these headphone jack style plugs, as it allows the user to DIY and change the headlight to what they prefer. It's a very common part to be able to find, and it's very easy to wire. Looks like that was stuck on there pretty good. It's a surprise that they didn't mount the tail light onto the handle similar to how they did the front bumper, but they are still using the same headphone jack or similar style jack for the tail light. So the tow hook here, when you're using it in practice, it's very secure. At no point in time did it release. It is held on by the thumb screw, but if you look carefully here, you'll see these ridges. Now if I flip it over, you'll see the corresponding ridges on the piece itself. Now this is what causes it to be so secure when you're using it. The only downside is you do only have a 5mm gap between each step. So you may not be able to fine tune it exactly to what you want, but may need to play around a little bit. The only problem now is the fact that it prevents you from using maybe your favorite Grizzly pads or your favorite Nanonove pads or Clark pads because of the fact that this is integrated into part of the wheel. Now it is removable, as you could see. However, if you remove it, you do lose your front bumper, and I believe the front bumper adds a lot in terms of the protection of the wheel. So personally, if I had a Patton, I would probably leave it on and try to find a way to do the pads around it, just so that I can retain the battery protection as well as the front bumper protection. So the way Leaper can mount to this pedal is quite interesting, where the battery box itself is the main frame of the wheel and they mount the pedals onto the battery box. But this also makes way for third parties to very easily modify the mount and their pedals to directly mount onto the pack without having to deal with Leaper Kim's ratchet design. I think for the more critical components of this wheel, I think for all intents and purposes, this is as far as I will go. We know that the shock is the similar one to the Sherman S. We know that this is covering the battery cable. The motor is the same as the Sherman S. On the flip side to that, everything is mounted to these battery cases, and the battery cases, I believe, is aluminum. Now, with the threads going to aluminum, one of my concerns is that you may strip some of these threads, and if you do, because they're aluminum, they're very easy to strip, and if that happens, you'll have to replace the battery case. Now, I would just say be very careful when you put things back together. Make sure you don't cross thread anything or force any screws into the holes. I like what they've done with it. The trolley handle's pretty good. It is a little bit Gotway-esque, meaning that it's a little bit wiggly, but overall they've done well. It is now time to put the wheel back together, go out on the road and get a first impressions for how this wheel feels on the feet and rides in the trails.
Alright, so we just finished our teardown. What now?
Looks like we're geared up for a ride. We're gonna do a first ride impressions on this veteran Patton. We're gonna do a quick loop, it's about 30 kilometers. And halfway through, I'm gonna switch with Christine and see if we can get a first impressions. Now, this is the first time we're doing this, so for data-wise, I am about 100 kilos. So I will let you know what I feel and what I think of this wheel. Christine, on the other hand, is the exact opposite. She is under 100 pounds.
45 kilos?
Yeah, so we get both sides of the spectrum here and we'll give you a really good analysis of what we think. Now, keep in mind, this is just a first impressions. We will have a longer ride review later, but this is just our gut feeling in the first 30 kilometers. We haven't ridden this wheel yet, and we'll be riding it with an S22 Pro and kind of swapping back and forth. So all of our comparisons will be relative to those two wheels.
All right.
Let's get going. Welcome back. I took it for a small little rip here through the trails, as you may have seen. It has a really good amount of torque. It took a lot of bumps really well. For my weight, I find this suspension to be a little bit too soft because I can kind of float around. I probably need to readjust the compression dampening and whatnot, but this is just riding it out of the box. So now we're gonna switch. I'm gonna let Christine ride it and see what she thinks of the wheel.
Yeah, but before that, maybe I will need to adjust the pad. Righty tighty, lefty loosey. There you go.
The good thing about this design is you have the ability to adjust the toe pad on the fly based on the rider without having to pull Velcro on and off.
The other side.
Now the only thing that needs to be seen is whether or not these toe clips stay where you tighten them to. It does look like there are some ridges on that plastic, so it should stay in place.
All right, so I just rolled around 10 kilometers on this. And so from jumping from the S22 to this thing, I did not expect the weight to be that much. So when I stopped, the wheel was kind of tipping to the ground. This wheel is pretty responsive. I had no problem starting or stopping and turning. So every single turn was very smooth and the suspension was good for me. Bump was good. It's just very flowy compared to the S22. I like this more. Even though it's heavier, but the ride is just better.
Hey Christine, do you want to talk about what's behind you?
Oh, we're going to do a torque test. So let's see if I can climb up this hill.
This is the reason why you must never full stand it when you go down a set of stairs.
I went too fast.
How is the torque up the hill?
It's amazing. I think going up the hill is easier than coming down the stairs.
You flew down those stairs all right.
The first set was fine. The second set I went too fast and I flew half of it straight into the bush. But I'm still alive.
Wow, man, that torque is just amazing. So, what did you think?
Amazing.
We went up the hill. We can show you what that angle of the hill is. We went down the stairs, a little bit of hiccup on the first try, but you got it on the second one. I will say, as a heavier rider, even though I went really, really slow up the hill, if I just held on, the wheel did get me up. So the amount of torque this thing has is just amazing. I don't think there's any other wheel that I could trust to do the same thing as what I did today.
Yeah, and with me lighter weight, I just flew up.
It didn't even look like a big hill for you.
No, it's just like flat.
Yeah,
Seriously,
like this
not
is
kidding.
one of the most amazing wheels in terms of torque so far.
Okay, so one thing I forgot to talk about is the jump pad. So earlier I changed the position, right? So it actually stayed and without moving. So that's pretty good.
So we just took the Patton out for a quick ride after our teardown, and it was purely just a first impressions look. We did not ride it that far. We did do a good mix of road, trail, some stairs. We did a steep hill climb. My thoughts and impressions for me personally, the suspension's a little bit on the lighter side. I did bottom out a couple times, more than I'd probably like to. The amount of torque that it has is really amazing, which you can see that in the climb video, because I weigh 230 pounds and this wheel, even though I stalled it on the hill, it kept going and it never dropped me. So I was very, very shocked by the amount of torque it has. It's quite a fun wheel, dare I say nimble, even though it weighs 90 pounds. The toe clips did really well, surprisingly. It didn't really move that much. There are these ridges in there, so it does lock in. It's not purely friction based on the thumb screw. It gets in these ridges, so there's different settings that you can set it to. The pads are not ideal, but they are very soft and allowed me to really control the wheel. I believe if you had Grizzlas or a different set of power pads, you could probably extract more performance out of the wheel. Well, how about you, Christine? What did you think about it when you were riding on the trails?
On the trail, it was amazing. I don't feel any bump. I tried to go onto the rocks purposely and roots, and I just don't feel it. It's just so fun. You talk about the jump pad.
Yeah.
For me, because I am so skinny, I have smaller feet. So even though I put it at the lowest setting, I still have room to move around. So I'm not locked in. So for people who love to be locked in, you might need to change your own pads. So that's the thing.
I did see someone add layers here to kind of lower it a little bit. This is a very stiff rubber. It's not soft, which is a good thing. But just make sure when you're adding layers to it, you're also adding stiff material and not soft material. How did it do on the hill?
Oh, that hill.
Yeah, that hill.
It just carried me up. I don't even feel it.
That
Just
hill
like
was
what I
probably
said, right?
35-degree slope, I would guess.
Yeah.
It's quite steep. It's even hard to stay on the hill to record.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So when she was recording, you can probably insert the B-roll, but she was having trouble staying on the hill.
Yeah.
Coming down the stairs, it did really well again. I think you went a little bit fast, maybe a little bit too fast.
A little bit. With me almost 1-to-1 weight, it was still a really good wheel. As long as once I got used to the weight, I don't think I had trouble braking or starting. Like starting, there's no problem because how torquey it is. So overall, it's just really good.
So hopefully in the future, we're able to do a little bit more testing, bring you a little bit more in-depth analysis. But I would say that the initial impression is pretty good.
And it gives me a lot of confidence on it. So usually when I first ride on a new wheel on the first day, I will be like wobbling or like, I feel very anxious. But with this wheel, I feel confident. I'm just like doing whatever, just go on rocks, go on roots, let's go faster.
Despite the 90 pounds on paper, it actually is very playful. It can go back and forth. You can carve with it really comfortably. Leaper Kim did a good job. So that's it for our quick teardown and analysis, as well as our first impressions. Hope to see you guys soon on the next video.
Bye bye.